good? It's your girl D with D Better Designs, and welcome back to Wix Wednesdays, where we highlight one Wix feature you must have on your website. Today we are talking about forms. Whether you have a contact form, subscribe form, client intake form, if you have a business, if you have a website, there should be some type of form on your website. And if it's not, baby, what are you doing? Today we are talking about how to add a form to your website, but not only that, how to customize it for your business needs. A key thing I want to know is that for today's demo, I am using my own website, which is on Wix Studio. If you have the Wix standard version, you can still follow along, but there may be some slight differences because the Wix Studio version does offer more customization options and they do have more features. But if you have any specific questions or concerns that I may not cover today, go ahead and drop them in the comments. Let's get into it. Now, as I mentioned, we are demoing with my website, so I do want to take you through a few different forms that I have myself. So I have a subscribe form at the bottom of my home page, which is basically just asking for the email. I also have a subscribe pop-up, which is not going to pop up in this video because I have been on my website for some time now. I also have the contact form, which is very basic, just asking for name, email, and message. There goes the form, of course. All right, you can see the subscribe form is just asking for the email, yes, subscribing to your newsletter, and submit. And it's pretty simple as that. But I want to get into my client intake form, or the form that I use when basically customers want to inquire about my services. So this form, as you can see, it just says, let's start with what you're here for. And they can choose from the list of services here. Now, at first glance, you may be like, oh, this looks very basic. I'm going to take you through it because the thing that I love about Wix Forms is that it allows customization that is easy on the eyes, easy for my customer experience, and allows me to optimize it where, depending on what my client choose or my potential client choose, determines what they will see next. So for instance, if they select Ideation Lounge, well, for my business, that is basically where customers or clients can come to me who have businesses who need help with that ideation phase of their business, helping bring their ideas to life. However, for that service, they don't have to book necessarily a consultation with me before having to book that service. So this is basically what is detailed, letting them know like, hey, you don't need this form. You can actually go ahead and head to the Ideation Lounge to continue with that service. However, let's say it's a web design or a revamp. In that case, then they do need to go ahead and fill out this form. So from here, they can input their information, their business information, and all the questions that I have to inquire about before they actually speak with me. The same for email marketing, but you may have noticed a slight difference. For instance, for email marketing, I have this specific question which says, you selected email marketing, what do you need help with? If they select just a website, as you can see, that question is nowhere to be found. So different rules or logic such as that you're able to set up with forms, and I'm going to take you through it. So we are going to start in the Wix editor. And for this demo, I did duplicate the page that I have, but we're just going to set up everything all over again. So once you are on the page that you want to add the form to, you're going to click the plus sign, which means add elements, and you can just search for form. Now you will see a few different options. You'll see old forms, create new forms, add existing forms. So for old forms, that is the older version of Wix, similar to the standard version, the non-Wix Studio version of Wix. This is what those forms look like. So I am not going to use that. I am just going to say create new form because I do want some of those additional features that the standard version does not have. So once you click on create new form, this is going to take you to the form dashboard. As you can see on your left hand side, you have several options to add different form fields. So starting with contacts, you have the option to add first name, last name, email, phone number, birthday, etc. So you need to have an understanding of what is this form even for before you even get started, right? So in this case, I'm just going to make a client intake form. So something like their birthday, I'm not going to need that unless maybe you're in a business, a service-based business or product-based business even, where you're offering discounts on their birthdays, or you're offering something free, similar to like also Sephora, how they offer a free gift when there's somebody's birthday. So if you're not doing anything like that, there's no reason for you to collect anyone's birthday. Other options that you have, let's say this is a form for a job. Say you want to go ahead and hire people and you need people to complete a form to apply for a role. So you can use different things such as like company name to ask for maybe their past employer. The position is what basically asks for their title, role, or occupation. And then this last option here, let's say you have like a wholesale business, for instance, where you're doing business to business type transactions, then you may need to ask for a tax ID or something as similar as that for your business. And you can add that field there. All right. In this case, I'm just going to ask for email and continue on. So next we have general. So starting off, you have your short answer, long answer. The difference between the two is that short answer, it does show on one line, whereas long answer shows multiple lines. So if you're expecting your customers to enter like more than one sentence, I would recommend going with long answer. So next you have other options such as link, file upload, signature, and star rating. So this is going to be an inquiry form, but let's say you wanted someone to upload inspiration, or I have another form where basically before customers get started with a website, they need to upload like their logo or any content that they expect to be on the website. So in that case, I will go ahead and click on file upload. As you can see to the right is where you're going to have more options. So going back to like the first name, last name fields, on the right, you have the option to make these required fields. And as you can see, the asterisks pop up there next to the field name. And then you have the option to input a placeholder text or a field description. I would recommend adding a field description if the title itself isn't enough for a customer to understand exactly what you're asking for. So on the right side, you have the option to customize what your customer can upload as well as how many items they can upload. So for an intake form, for instance, for my customers, I need them to be able to upload any images or any documents with the content that they need me to put on their website, right? So for the file limit, I'm going to change that to maybe 10, right? So the reason you do want to limit it based on how many customers you're going to have this form is because you do have a limited amount of storage that you are allowed. So as customers are uploading their documents to your forms, it's basically counting towards that storage that you're being assigned. So you do want to just be mindful of that. Star rating is another great one if this is being used as a feedback form. So let's say that, maybe you offered a service and you want your customers to give you a feedback. So you would do long answer, and you could have, maybe questions, specific questions about how was the service. If there's anything they would recommend, that would be long answer. How would they rate their service 1 through 5? That would be a star rating. So that is very beneficial to use in that case. Next, we have our choices: single choice, multiple choice, drop down, tag picker, and a checkbox. So I'm just going to add all of these so you see what they look like. Pretty much look very similar to each other. As you can see on the right hand side, you do have those options to customize. Now, one thing I want you to make note of is all the way at the bottom right, it says personal information, which is personal identifiable information. So anything such as telephone numbers, addresses, or maybe your business needs to collect something like social security numbers, for instance, you do want to make sure that it's on. For phone numbers and addresses, that will likely already be on, but you do want to make sure if you are collecting sensitive data that you do have that on, because it does encrypt that information. So we oftentimes experience or see companies go through data breaches or anything like that, Wix do have certain security measures based around that, so you do want to make sure that it's on. Next, we have dates. I want you to make sure you understand that the date section is different from the scheduling section. So if you just want your customers or clients to pick a date and time, or just pick a time, this will not be tied to your booking calendar at all. This is just collecting information. If you want them to be able to schedule or book an appointment based on your calendar that's tied to Wix, then you do want to go ahead and use the appointment feature. This appointment feature will be tied to your calendar. However, you do want to make sure you scroll down and select a staff if you have multiple staffs. If you only have one, it will automatically fill this option here, but you do want to make sure that if you do have multiple staff, that you have the correct one selected. And then you also have the option for this to be a phone call, online, in person. If you choose the option for online, it will automatically select or create a custom video link based on your settings that's already set up for the booking form. So in my case, I use Google Meet, but let's say that you use Zoom. You could just go ahead and change that there. Zoom is the default option. So for your payment section, you have a few different options. You have where they can basically purchase a product, and you could add a product. Now this, as you can see, is not tied to your actual Wix store. So you will have to input the name, price, and a picture of the product here. You have a fixed price. Let's say you're offering a class for $15. You could just input that fixed price there. Your custom price, which is very similar. However, you are allowing your customer or client to set the price. And of course, they have a minimum. So this will be beneficial. Let's say you're doing a raffle or an auction where they could set the price themselves. And then next, which is self-explanatory, you have the donation option. So we are going to remove all of these as well. Next, you have your submit button, which you can see here, there is already a submit button. You also have your header and text. So let's say for this first section, I may want to add a header that says customer information. And then I could add text with a short description here. All right, but let's continue to get into the nitty gritty. Now you understand how to set up the form. You have the different form fill options, but let's dive a bit deeper than that, right? So we are going to stay with the basics that I have here. And as you can see on the left-hand side, there are three options. You have the one that we are currently on, which is add form fills. You have your rules and you have your pages. I'm going to start with pages and then I'm going to go back to rules. So for pages, I would recommend using this to, if you have like a long form, to basically break it apart. If they have to continuously scroll and scroll and scroll, I feel like it makes it a bit overwhelming and also difficult to see, especially on the mobile version where you have to keep answering, scrolling until you finally make it to the end. I would recommend, before you even get started with the form, maybe writing or planning out all the different questions that you want to ask and figure out how you can basically categorize them so that you could bunch them together on one page. So I'm going to add a page here just to show you all what that'll look like. And then let's say on the second page is where I want to add some more questions. Let's do a drop down and a tag picker. All right. So as you can see here on that first page where we basically started with, you now have a next button instead of a submit button. And then on that second page, you now have the back button to go back to page one, or the submit button. I'm going to save this for now just so you all can see how it'll look on the front end. All right. So as you can see here, this is basically what the form looks like on the front end, and you have that next button. So once I complete everything that is required, it will take me back to that second page. So going back to the rules, I'm going to click on that form and then go to edit form. So let's get into the nitty gritty. We have covered the different fields. We have covered the pages, and now we are getting into the rules. This is my favorite part. Remember, going back to the beginning of this video, I showed you all my form and how, depending on what option the client selected, determine what they will see next. So this is where that comes into play. So going back to the dashboard, you want to go ahead and click on the rules icon to the left and click add rules. This is the default that's going to come up. It's an if-then statement. So select this field. We're going to use the drop-down field. If drop-down is equal to, let's say, the second option, then as you can see, you have your options of the other fields. Now, when you are using this option, you do want to make sure that the field that you're using in the if statement comes before the field that you're using in the then statement. So for this one, let's say schedule an appointment comes after the drop-down field. And I'm going to select hidden. So basically what this is saying is when a client goes through this form and they select testing 2 or the second option in the drop-down field, then the schedule or the appointment scheduler is going to automatically be hidden. That's basically it. And as you can see, you can continue to add additional conditions and additional rules. So for an additional condition, I can say if last name is empty. Also hide the scheduling form. Or I can say if the drop down is selected to testing 2, the last name is empty, then hide the scheduling appointment and hide the box that says this is a checkbox. Alright, so I'm going to click save, and we're basically going to see what that looks like from the front end. Alright, so looking at it from the front end, as you can see here, the last name field is blank, so there is no checkbox option. But let's say I go ahead and enter. As you can see, both the checkbox option and the scheduling form automatically appears. And again, if I decide to remove that, it disappears. Also going down to the drop-down option. Also going down to the drop-down option. Let's say that as you can see, those I input a name. As you can see, those options come back, but then I select testing 2 from the drop-down. Those options disappear. So that is basically how the rules work. But all right, what else can you do with the forms? Let's get into actually editing the front end. So as I mentioned, to get to the dashboard, you want to click on edit form, but to customize it from the front end, you do want to go to settings. As you see, you have the option to select any form that you've already created. You can use the same form throughout the website on various pages. Going to layout, you have the option here to set your padding. That is basically how far you want your form from the edges of your page, as well as from the top and bottom of the various sections that you have either above or below the form itself. So next you have your design where you can choose your background, how you want your fields to show up. As you can see here, you have different input styles. For me, I have all sides, so it looks like a box, but you could choose bottom where it's just a line, or none at all, which I don't recommend unless you're using a different color background for the form, because as you can see in the middle of the page, you can't even see where you're supposed to type. If you continue down, you can see you have more options to change the text in the text color for the form. If you click on manage form, that would just basically take you back to the dashboard where we came from. And then last you have your support options if you need additional help. So moving on, you can also access your forms without going through the dashboard. So let's say you need to make a quick edit. You don't have to go all the way into the editor, then to the page, and then edit it. You can come in from your Wix dashboard and select or search for Wix Forms, which is under the customer and leads and forms and submission. As you can see here, there are several forms that I currently have. One thing that you do want to pay attention to is that for your entire website, as you can see at the top, you have 10 forms that you're allowed to place on your website. If you try to create beyond that, you will get an error letting you know that you have basically maxed out on the number of forms that you have. As you can see, the top one is the form that we just created. If I click edit, that is going to take me to that dashboard that we've been working off of from the beginning. Right? So that's just another way to access your form to be able to edit it as well. To the right of the edit option, you do have 3 dots. If you click on that, you have a few options. You can preview the form. You can add the form to the site if you haven't already done so. That will just take you to the editor. You have the form settings, form notifications, and you can duplicate the form as needed. One thing that I want you to make note of is at the top where it says view submissions. If someone does submit your form, you will receive a notification from Wix letting you know that someone has completed the form in the name of the form. So when you're naming your form, you do want to make sure that you're not all naming them the same thing. So at first glance, you will automatically know which form this person just submitted. In addition, you will also receive an email letting you know that the person just submitted a form. But let's say you want to just go on your website, you can go here where you see your submissions. You can see what was labeled as spam or what you can categorize as spam, as well as trash. So with the submissions, as you can see here, these are a few test submissions that I submitted with my form. And as you can see, without upload, it'll let you go to exactly what the clients uploaded. And you can also see all of the information that they input into the field here. If you click on the 3 dots towards the right, you have the option to report it as spam. As you can see, it's going to move over to spam, or you have the option to move it to the trash, and you can still see those options here. And then the top option was for you to be able to download it as a PDF. So you can see it here on the side, and you kind of still have those same options to either edit it, download it, report it as spam, or move it to trash. One thing that I forgot to make note of, in addition to setting up the form, you do have this settings option here. This is where you will go to name your form. You have the option to customize a few more things here. So the asterisk that I showed you when we were going through the different fields, you have the option to leave the asterisk as is, as that is the default option, or to make a label that just says required or nothing at all. I wouldn't, and as you can see, Wix wouldn't recommend either to put nothing at all, because you don't want people to get to the end of the field and then realize that there are a lot of fields that are required. Like, that's not a great customer experience. If it was me, I'd probably just exit out the form. You also have the option to customize the confirmation message. As you can see here, the default is to show a message, or you can redirect to a URL. Let's say you have a full blown out page, or you could just clear the form. For me, I just show a message, and then I set up an automation to automatically send them a welcome email. And then you could customize how soon after the message will appear from the submission. Once they submit, click that submit button. How soon will that message appear? I would recommend putting it at 3 seconds or less, just because our attention spans are short these days. So someone may be looking at 8 seconds or longer, and they're like, okay, did I submit it? Did I not submit it? Did it go through? Did it not go through? So I would recommend 3 seconds or less. I previously mentioned automations. Like I mentioned, I have set up where it automatically sends a welcome email that I designed. So basically you have those automations set up for you, where you will basically get an email when a form is submitted or a new submission is received for onboarding. If you click edit, I'm not going to go into it, but if you click edit, you will see the option to customize the email itself. So as you saw in the form, you do have different options for products or services to basically set a price for it. Here you want to set up the payment option if you do go that route. As you can see here, it'll take you back to the form where you could add those payment options. So let's say, let's just do that for now. And go back to settings. Under payments, it changed to accept payments. If you didn't already have your payments set up, for instance, I do, instead of manage, it'll just say set up payments, and you can follow that through. I'm not going to get into the validations. That does deal with setting up different functions similar to the like if, then, conditions and different things like that. That's a video for another day. You do have additional options as such as your form status. Let's say you only want to use this form up until a certain period of time or only for a certain number of submissions. You have the option to edit that there. And then last but not least, you have the option to change the language. So if your clients are bilingual, you can go ahead and modify your form or even your entire website to make it bilingual as well. That adding and customizing a form for your website is just that easy. If you found this video helpful or beneficial, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and see you here next week's Wednesday where we highlight one Wix feature you must have on your website. Until next time.